Level 2. We are under level 2 lockdown here in South Africa, and I'm ecstatic because we've been under one of the harshest lockdowns in the entire world for the past 5 months. 3 million people lost their jobs in South Africa during this lockdown. And I'm just ecstatic. Everywhere we drove, we saw more and more people living on the streets, and it was heartbreaking. The official number says 3 million people lost their jobs during lockdown because of many industries and businesses having to close down. So I am ecstatic today. I am ecstatic, and obviously we're going to continue with our communal effort in trying to keep healthy during this pandemic by social distancing, wearing our masks, and sanitizing. However, this is amazing news. Especially today, the wind is howling, it's freezing outside, and last night I really had difficulty sleeping just thinking about all the people living with really nothing in freezing cold. And when I think of children being affected in that way, even if children are not homeless with their parents, but the fact that a child might be in foster care, thinking about their mom or dad being homeless, it still breaks my heart. So this is why I'm doing this series, delving into my own personal experience of having been homeless in Cape Town, because I want to shed a light on this, and not a light in the way that, everybody knows about this social ills, but a light in terms of a light within, so that when we as society meet people on the street, we're able to really help them in a long-term way, not just by ignoring them or a handout with regard to money or food, because a lot of times you'd buy a homeless person a can of food, but then how will that person open it? Because they don't have a can opener. So now they spend such a long time looking for something, a knife, whatever, to open the can with, that it's not practical. You gave it with the best of intention, but it's not a practical thing to give to somebody that's homeless. So this is why this series, Homeless Mothers and Pregnant Homeless Women, is so important. Welcome to part 3 of the series. So I will be just diving right into where I left off last time, which is hygiene when you are homeless, especially for women. Hygiene is something that has such a big effect on your self-esteem, on your self-worth, on your mindset, on the way that others perceive you and subsequently treat you, on your opportunities in life, your ability to actually get yourself out of the situation you're in and get a job. And it's really difficult when you're homeless. I remember when we went to malls and we had to go to the disabled bathroom store, because in there they had a wash basin as well, and just do a quick rinse. And it's really intense, especially for women, because we have a monthly cycle, and having to deal with that whilst being homeless, you have no privacy. The ability to actually regroup and groom yourself in order to look better is non-existent. Where are you going to do that? Because the security comes and knocks on the door. You've been here too long. And I understand that, because somebody else might need to use the store. But then next time you're not able to use it because right of admission is reserved. So next time you're just not able to use that bathroom. So your options become limited. That is one of the most hurtful things that a lot of society think about the homeless is that they don't care about themselves or their appearance. When that's not the case, later on, I'm sure you don't care anymore, because if you've been kicked in a boot, if you've been kicked in your face with a boot for your entire life, it would seem, even if it's 3 months of being homeless, 4 months, a year, you don't care anymore. It rips away your hope and purpose. But initially, it doesn't start out like that. You want to feel good. You want to look good. And logistically, it isn't possible. So that is a preconceived notion and perception that definitely needs to change. And it is something society and governments should be looking at, and that is, what kind of resources will be put out to help people that are in a situation such as this, so that they are able to get out of this situation. First off, there should be no homeless people. But I'm sure before we get to that point, there will be an intermediary point, and that point we should definitely have bathroom stalls that are freely available for people to use and better themselves. And I do understand a lot of people are going to say now, but people will use that in order to do drugs. Just like most things, it should be regulated. Everything is regulated. Climbing in your car is a regulated thing. There is a speed limit. You can't just drive whatever speed you want, even though there are people that do that. But then we have traffic police, we have cameras which catch people that do that. So we shouldn't police the homeless, but obviously there should be regulations in place. However, people should be treated with dignity and be given the opportunity to look after their temple. This is your temple. And it's super important that you feel good and look good. And just on this subject of hygiene, it brings me to the water situation that we were facing in Cape Town. We had to walk long distances in order to get taps with running water in the Sea Point area. And even some fuel stations told us, no, you can't use our tap to fill your water bottles up. That is the truth. They literally say that we are not able to use their water. So then we went to a big mall in Cape Town and tried to fill it up, and it was such a shock when we're in the bathroom and the wash basins are built like that, like on a decline or incline. And that makes it impossible for you to put a 2-liter bottle in there because it's not able to fit in there. So you can only put a 500 ml bottle in there. So if you only have that one 500 ml bottle, you can't walk very far in order to try to do something with your day before you need to stop and think about getting water again. So you're constantly just thinking about something as basic. And by the way, the use basic, that use of the word is on purpose. It's a basic human right to have water. You have to keep thinking about these basic concepts as opposed to thinking about bettering yourself, getting out of the situation. What is your next plan? Because your mind is kept in this mental slavery of thinking about where you're going to get water next. And will the next petrol attendant or fuel station say that you're not allowed to get water there? And then big malls where you have more freedom to go to the bathroom are built in such an intense way. I don't know if that was on purpose, because it was an establishment meant for international tourists, and I'm sure that, I'm not sure, they only cater to a certain clientele. So that's a very interesting question. I will leave that as an open-ended question. I have my opinion on it. And that brings me to why I started this vlog. Apart from seeing everybody on the street here in South Africa that is homeless, and it increasing at such a crazy level during lockdown, I kept thinking of this woman that Neil and I met during our homeless experience in Cape Town, and she was a homeless pregnant woman. And remember in part 2, I told you that in Sea Point, when you go out on the rocks, they had this bench built. So you can sit there and look at the ocean, think, take photos, etc. And Neil and I were sitting there one day and just chatting like, what are we going to do? This is the situation. And this lady comes there. And she is obviously pregnant. Like, she looks like she's about to pop. And she does look homeless and destitute. And we started talking with her, and it was just such a sad situation. Later on, her baby daddy also joined us. And the situation was just dire. One of her other children had been placed in foster care because she couldn't look after her child. And she was currently in an abusive relationship with this person that she was with. But the way that it worked in their sphere of having been homeless for more than a year already, there was like a clique of people in the street. And if she didn't stay with him or leave that area entirely, then she would be killed or raped or have to become somebody else's woman. So it's a very, I don't want to use the word gang, but it's a very, all the words I want to use are not appropriate. It's just one of those situations. She stuck with him because he offered her a certain level of protection. And it was very sad because she was in an abusive relationship. He was smoking drugs. She wanted to get in the process of raising this baby in a home, in her own home, and not have social services take this child away. And later on be in the position to see her other child more. And that broke my heart. That was one of the most sad situations because she didn't know where to start. She didn't have enough resources. Like, her sister stayed very far away and was in a kind of similar situation. Her parents had passed away and she was stuck. Like, she couldn't figure out how to just get to the next level of getting enough money to go somewhere else away from this man and to start a new life. Like, she didn't have 100 rand to be able to make that kind of life decision. And when you are homeless also, your mind is always busy with such basic concepts like finding water, food, shelter, that on Maslow's hierarchy, you're not busy with stuff like self-actualization. It's difficult to think of higher concepts when you are constantly just busy with basic concepts. And if there was more help from many organizations in South Africa, then this would be different. Because I do commend many organizations and churches that do give food to the homeless, etc. but that doesn't offer a long-term solution to somebody who truly wants to change their life. And next week I will be looking at just how we as a society can help the homeless, and many organizations that do help the homeless in a sustainable way. So not bad-mouthing anybody, just talking about personal experience. For instance, when we went to the Salvation Army in Cape Town, Neil and I, they told us that they take men in. And then when you're together and homeless, it's a mental thing, like you want to stick together. And so we didn't take them up on the offer and we stayed homeless. So even though the Salvation Army is very well intentioned in that they would have helped Neil, he didn't want me going wherever, and it's a mind game when you're homeless. It's very deep. So how we got out of it is one day we were sitting just on a curb and we were having an ice cream. I know it's cold during the evening, but it's still quite temperate during the day in April. And we were having an ice cream and this police officer came to us and he said, "You're homeless, right?" We're like, "What?" "No, we're not, we're tourists." And he's like, "No, my name is Neville and you're homeless because this is my area. This is my beat and I know everything that goes on here, and I've looked at you for the past few days and you're homeless. And this happened." And we were like, "Okay." He's like, "Can I take you for coffee?" And he took us for coffee. Beautiful man, God bless him. And he spoke to us and told us that the government has this initiative that in the city of Cape Town, they send people back to where they came from through the train. And then we had this discussion and we said, "Okay, we'll get back to you," as if we had a choice. And Neil and I went to just talk about it, and I snapped. That afternoon I walked into the ocean because I was like, okay, if we go back, where will we go to? And I walked into the ocean. I was just like, done. I was done. And he told me, no. Well, he didn't tell me. He literally had to get me out of the ocean. And he went to a tiki box, one of these big phone thingies. And he phoned my parents and he asked them if we could stay with them for a while. And he told them that we were homeless and etc., etc. And my parents said yes. So Neil took some money that he had and he got more money from Voldu, and he bought me a bus ticket to go back. And he waited another 10 days or so to work a bit more, pay Voldu back, and then used that initiative that Neville, the Metro policeman, was talking about, which is to come back with a train. And that is how we got out of that situation. When we came back to Pretoria, he went back to the job, which he left with the boss that made the comments. I came back and things were very strained between my parents and I, but I thanked God for the opportunity of being back and not being homeless. So I was just grateful for an opportunity to be able to take a warm bath, sleep in a warm bed, and live. And I got a job as a waitress as well. And that is how we got out of that situation. And it is really intense. There are many organizations that help people, but they only do so with a handout of food. And as I've said, you need a lot more than that. You need the privacy in order to think. You need therapy in order to plan your life and get over situations that you're currently dealing with and that you've dealt with in life, because the main cause of homeless women is domestic abuse. You need resources in the current, such as shelter and not only food. It's so multifaceted. You need data. A lot of the shelters that are overnight shelters don't offer things such as data. So to look for a job, then how do people get money? A lot of girls go out and prostitute themselves while they're staying in the shelter, and then when the people find out in the shelter what that girl is doing, they throw them out again. But then it's a vicious circle, because that girl might be looking for a job, but she doesn't have access to data to be able to access the internet, and then makes a plan or goes and begs for money. And then the shelter's like, what? We're trying to help you. But yes, it needs to be help in so many verticals, because if it's not, then you as the homeless person have to make a plan, and then that plan might be against the person who's helping you's conditions. But what they don't understand is that you need help in so many different facets. So we will be looking at that next time. Thank you so much for listening to my journey. Obviously, I didn't share all of it, but I shared what was important to know for this series. Go out and be the light in this world. Just think of when you were 5 years old and treat everybody the way that you wanted to be treated when you were 5.